Join us on Patreon and become part of our journey to uncover history's untold stories. Your support helps us create in-depth content, bring hidden narratives to life, and keep history alive for everyone.
The rolling hills and dense woodlands of the Indian Territory in the summer of 1863 were shrouded in tension and uncertainty. The American Civil War had spilled into this land, engulfing Native American nations in a conflict that was never their own. On July 17, 1863, the Battle of Honey Springs unfolded, marking a decisive moment in the war's Western Front. Though overshadowed by the simultaneous Vicksburg and Gettysburg campaigns, this battle was a critical Union victory that cemented federal control over the region. It was fought not only between Union and Confederate forces, but also among Native American factions divided by alliances, ideological struggles, and the burden of survival. The battle's significance stretched beyond the battlefield, shaping the social and political future of the Indian Territory. As the Civil War raged across the eastern and western theaters, the Indian Territory became a contested region between the Union and Confederate armies. The five civilized tribes, the Cherokee, Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, and Seminole, had been forcibly relocated to these lands decades earlier under the Indian Removal Act. By 1861, when war broke out, the tribes faced a harrowing decision: to side with the Confederacy or remain loyal to the Union. The Confederacy, under the leadership of Albert Pike, promised protection, autonomy, and financial incentives. Many tribal leaders, including Stand Watie of the Cherokee Nation, aligned with the Confederate cause, believing it would preserve their sovereignty. Others, such as Apathiahola of the Creek Nation, remained steadfastly pro-Union, leading to a bitter internal conflict that forced Native American communities into brutal warfare against one another. By the summer of 1863, the Union had gained momentum in the Indian Territory. The federal government aimed to break Confederate control over the region, particularly in strategic locations like Fort Gibson. Confederate forces under Brigadier General Douglas H. Cooper sought to strike first, seizing Union supplies at Fort Gibson and maintaining their dominance. To achieve this, Cooper stationed his troops at Honey Springs, a crucial supply depot along the Texas Road, a vital artery connecting Confederate forces in Texas to the rest of the Trans-Mississippi region. The Confederate Army at Honey Springs numbered around 6,000 men, a force composed primarily of Native American troops from the Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, and Cherokee nations, along with Texas cavalry and a contingent of African-descended soldiers fighting for the South. Many of these troops were poorly equipped, relying on outdated muskets and suffering from a shortage of supplies. Adding to their struggles was a supply chain hindered by heavy rains, which had dampened their gunpowder and reduced their combat effectiveness. In contrast, Union forces under Major General James G. Blunt commanded roughly 3,000 troops, including the 1st Kansas Colored Infantry Regiment, one of the first black regiments to see combat in the Civil War. The Union Army was a diverse composition of white, black, and Native American soldiers, symbolizing the broad coalition fighting to secure the West for the Union. With superior weaponry, logistics, and morale, Blunt planned a surprise attack to dislodge the Confederates from their stronghold at Honey Springs. At dawn on July 17, 1863, the Union forces advanced through the thick underbrush toward the Confederate encampment. Blunt's strategy relied on speed and coordination, and he divided his forces into 3 columns to encircle the enemy. The initial skirmish saw Union artillery unleash a bombardment that disoriented Cooper's men. As the Confederate ranks attempted to form defensive lines, the 1st Kansas Colored Infantry charged forward, engaging in fierce combat that would later be recognized as a historic moment for African American troops in the Civil War. The Confederates, struggling with wet gunpowder, found themselves at a disadvantage as the Union forces pressed forward. The battle raged for hours, with brutal close-quarters combat erupting along the battlefield. Despite a determined resistance from the Texas cavalry and Cherokee troops under Stand Watie, the Union forces steadily gained ground. The breaking point came when Blunt's artillery pounded the Confederate center, forcing Cooper to order a retreat. By mid-afternoon, the Union forces had secured the battlefield, capturing supplies, wagons, and weaponry left behind by the fleeing Confederate troops. The Battle of Honey Springs was more than a tactical victory. It was a symbolic triumph that demonstrated the effectiveness of Black and Native American troops in battle. The success of the 1st Kansas Colored Infantry challenged prevailing racist attitudes within the military and provided a precedent for the broader enlistment of Black soldiers. The victory also dealt a severe blow to Confederate ambitions in the Indian Territory, severing their supply lines and crippling their hold on the region. With Fort Gibson secured, the Union gained an unassailable position from which they would continue to push southward, further destabilizing Confederate control. In the broader context of the war, Honey Springs served as a microcosm of the Civil War's shifting dynamics. It was a battle that underscored the increasing diversity of Union forces, the fragile allegiances of Native American nations, and the declining fortunes of the Confederacy in the Trans-Mississippi Theater. It also foreshadowed the continued Union victories that would culminate in the total collapse of Confederate resistance in the West by 1865. Today, the Honey Springs battlefield stands as a preserved historic site, offering a window into a lesser-known but crucial chapter of the Civil War. The engagement is remembered not just for its strategic importance, but for the complex interplay of racial, political, and cultural forces that shaped its outcome. It remains a testament to the diverse groups who fought and sacrificed in a war that ultimately redefined the nation.